Welcome to Finding Holiness, where we delve into timeless Torah wisdom, revealing the sacred in everyday moments. Join us on a journey to elevate your spirituality and discover holiness in every aspect of life. I'm your host, Rabbi David Kadosh, and together, let's embark on a path of spiritual exploration. I hope you enjoy this next episode. Okay. Bruchim Habayim, everybody. Welcome to the last installment of our Shovavim series. Normally we conduct a Parashat HaShavua Shiur tonight, and for good reason, because it's good to talk about the Parashat. But over the last few weeks, we've had various speakers sitting in this chair to speak about topics related to Shovavim. Shovavim are the weeks. Shovavim is an acronym that stands for Shmot Va'era Bo B'Shalach Yitro Mishpatim. It is 6 weeks, and in a leap year it's 8 weeks, that we focus on ourselves. We focus more on the purity of the Jewish neshama. It is a time where we review a lot of laws about family purity, which some of the previous speakers have done already. And then we have other aspects of our lives in a more sensitive material. So I titled this shiur Shemirat Enayim, and we're going to speak about today, B'ezrat Hashem, this concept about guarding our eyes, because as we're going to see, the eyes, Chachamim say, lead right into the neshama of a person. If you want to see into the neshama, you look right into the eyes, and you can access it. So the eyes are not only a very delicate part of our body physically, but certainly spiritually. So I'm going to break up this shiur into 2 parts. The first part is going to be halachic based. Certain laws about what men can see, what women can't see. We have women here today present, and we have a lot of women online as well. And the second part of the shiur will be more just esoteric ideas, some stories, some inspiring things to close off. So the words I'm going to say tonight really are coming from two, three major sources. The first one is of Aryeh Leibowitz, the Rav in, I believe, North Woodmead, New York, in the Five Towns. Big Chacham, very, very popular on YU Torah. And he has a very beautiful, well-thought, thought-provoking analysis of Shemirat Enayim, halachic analysis. Then we'll look at some words from Rav Elimelech Bitterman, from his Torah Wellsprings, and we'll conclude with an idea from the Tosha Rebbe, who, of course, the great tzaddik of Tosh, who lived in Montreal and died not too long ago. So we'll start like this: the age of the internet and mass communication brought the whole world, not just the Jewish community, with many advantages and challenges. And one of the more difficult problems that we have today because of the internet is our ability to avoid viewing sexually explicit material, inappropriate material on the internet. The Jew in the modern world finds himself in a battle, in a struggle, every single day. And therefore it's very critical, like I said, to review some of the halachot that pertain to this, and some ideas later on what to do for ourselves to protect ourselves from gazing at inappropriate material. So let's talk about the 2 isurim. There are 2 prohibitions that a person will probably transgress if he was to look at inappropriate material. And our rabbis tell us that it's based on 2 separate verses, 2 separate pesukim in the Torah. The first one, the Gemara Masechet Brachot talks, and he quotes a pasuk that we say every single day in the Shema. Velo taturu achare levavchem ve'achare einechem. That you shall not follow after your hearts and after your eyes. And the Gemara expresses this idea and connects it to the prohibition of arayot, which is the nakedness or the inappropriateness. The eye sees, the heart desires, and then the body commits to a sin. That's what the Gemara says. So the prohibition of following your eyes is in relation to that to naturally follow inappropriate visual content, commercials, movies that precede a physical violation of the prohibition. So it's going to start with your heart's desires leading to your eyes to see, and then you're going to actually act. The Gemara then says, there's another pasuk, Gemara Masech Tuvot, that says, V'nishmartem mikol davar ra, that you have an obligation to protect yourself from any evil thing. And the Gemara there expands, what does this refer to? This includes gazing at women. This refers to watching animals mate, even gazing at women's clothing, even when they're not wearing them. And the Chachamim, the Mefarshim, explain that from the fact that the pasuk says mikol davar ra, davar is usually speech, dibur. The fact that there's a word mikol davar ra, it's an expansive term to include thoughts. There's a sin in this pasuk that also includes illicit thoughts. The word ra itself is usually a reference to unnecessary seminal emission from a man. When discussing the story of Er ve'Onan were the two sons of Yehuda, the son of Yaakov, and these two sons refused to impregnate Tamar, who was their wife. Instead, they chose they wasted their seed, they wasted seminal emissions, and the Torah specifically describes their actions as ra b'nei Hashem. It was bad in the eyes of God. So kol davar ra must refer to the avoidance of something that would lead to seminal emission. So if you have two psukim, question that a lot of people ask is, why is it even necessary to have two psukim? Why do I have two separate psukim? But Moshe Feinstein actually addresses this in his Sefer Igor Moshe. We're going to quote a lot of Moshe Feinstein today. And he says that V'nishmartem mikol davar ra is a prohibition to look at things that might might bring you to a seminal emission at night. V'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem is a prohibition to think about a sin that one might actually commit. And based on this analysis, Rav Moshe Feinstein says that women are only included in the latter verse, but not the prohibition of the former one, because women do not have seminal emissions. So Rav Feinstein actually says that a woman may watch animals mate. They're allowed to watch animals mate. They can look at men's clothing, because these thoughts don't inspire them thoughts of committing an actual a sin. It would seem, even according to Rav Moshe Feinstein, that a woman may not watch sexually explicit material because it's likely to, induce her to sin in some manner. And even though there's no chance she will have any contact with the actors that are portraying this, but nevertheless, it seems from Rav Moshe Feinstein, a woman would not be allowed to watch that even just like a man wouldn't be allowed to. The Gemara, the Rambam doesn't really make much of a difference between women and men in terms of what they're allowed to gaze. The Rambam writes that the prohibition of immoral thoughts applies to both men and women. And in fact, he writes that a person should marry off his sons and daughters when they are young. He mentions sons and daughters, so that they should not come to immoral thoughts. So we see from here that even women have to worry about having improper thoughts. On the other hand, there is a very famous Gemara in Masechet Brachot that speaks about Rabban Yochanan, who was an extraordinary good-looking man, and he would sit at the entrance of the mikveh, so that women, when they came out of the mikveh, they would be able to gaze at him and look at him, thereby positively affecting the children that might be conceived that night when they go back to their husband, to be with their husband. Which seems to imply that a woman are allowed to gaze at a good-looking man. There's another situation, another story in Sefer Shmuel Aleph, that the Gemara talks about how two women were prolonging a conversation with Shaul HaMelech and saying more words that was necessary in order to spend time to look at him, to gaze at him, because Shaul was also a very handsome man. So the implication here is that women may look at good-looking men, but to some extent they can't have immoral thoughts about them. So based on these Gemarot, says Rav Moshe Feinstein, that it is prohibited for a man to think even about his own wife in sexual ways, because that might lead him to a seminal emission at night if he's not actually being intimate with his wife. Now, whether women can look at men who are dressed inappropriately in a non-sexual context, for example, if men are sitting by a swimming pool or swimming by a beach, that's actually subject to debate amongst the poskim, meaning gazing. We're going to see there's going to be a difference between gazing and looking. They're two different things. Gazing is a strong stare for a long period of time. On one hand, it could be argued that women are not inspired to sin by seeing men sitting by a beach or by a pool. But on the other hand, some say, no, this would only apply, the leniency would only apply if the man is fully dressed. But if he's just wearing a bathing suit or even less, let's say, then certainly it would be prohibited. The severity and the difficulty of this isur of seeing things that we shouldn't see is undoubtedly very, very strongly spoken in the Lashon of the Chachamim. The Gemara, first of all, says that bad thoughts, illicit thoughts, are among the three challenges that most men succumb to each and every single day. And the Gemara elsewhere in Nedarim says that anybody who looks at a woman, who gazes as a woman, certainly will come to sin. Certainly. It's like not even a chance. You will come to sin. There's another statement in the Gemara, Brachot and Eruvin, that says that one who passes behind a woman in the river has no chelik in Olam Haba, no portion in Olam Haba. The Gemara even emphasizes that even if this person has good deeds, has ma'asim tovim, like Moshe Rabbeinu, if he takes a few moments to look and gaze at a woman's beauty, he will not be spared from Gehinnom. He won't be spared. And he will lose his portion in Olam Haba. It's very, very strong statements. The Sefer HaChinuch writes that he writes what people tend to believe, that it won't affect me. Generally, a person goes around and says, "Okay, it's okay. I can look, and it's not going to lead me to thinking about sinning. So therefore, I don't have a problem." But he still has to refrain, because says the Sefer Chinuch, a person cannot trust himself in this area. Experience tells us that most people who gaze and look at things that they shouldn't do stumble. And the Gemara even prohibits staring at an unattractive woman or an unattractive married woman. So you got two reasons why you shouldn't even be looking at this lady. She's married and she's unattractive to you. But even that, the Gemara says you shouldn't do. One of the reasons why people don't fully appreciate the magnitude of the prohibition of looking at inappropriate material is because people think that just looking isn't much. And again, we'll expand on this when we look at what Rav Bitterman writes. But again, the fact that the Rambam writes that if a person sees things that he shouldn't see, it's almost impossible for him to do teshuvah, because he doesn't think that he's done anything wrong. The eyes are the parts of the body, probably second to the hands, that wander the most. Just think of yourself, how often you find yourself just staring at random things, so whether it's either spacing out or just because you're interested and you're curious. But in reality, as much as a person thinks he hasn't done something wrong, it's a grave sin that he's doing. And in many ways, says the Sfat Emet, that a person's thoughts, illicit thoughts that he has to be with women, are worse than if you actually do the action itself. Because the level of desire increases exponentially when you are thinking about it. The Sfat Emet says that the long-term effects of sins of thought are more debilitating than the effects of actual sin. Because when a person commits an averah, then I only need to refrain from that activity in the future. But sinful thoughts constantly creep in a person's mind. And also besides the fact that you don't have to worry about anyone seeing you because it's in your mind. As we're going to see, a person that lacks proper thoughts, he's also lacking in his fear of Hashem. That's why every time there's a mitzvah in the Torah that says, V'yareta meloecha, that you shall fear God, it's always referring to a mitzvah that you think you can get away with. Don't put a stumbling block in front of the blind, and you shall fear God. Why? Because I can always excuse myself and say, I didn't mean it. And you're going to have to take my word for it. I didn't mean to give this guy bad advice. It just was a bad stock pick. But really, you knew what you were doing, so you have to fear God. God knows what you're thinking. On a purely halachic level, gazing inappropriately at an unmarried woman is worse than touching her, some say. When you touch her, many say it's just an isur de rabbanan. It's a bad isur de rabbanan, but it's isur de rabbanan. But gazing at her is an isur de oraita. It's a biblical avera. It's extremely serious. Rav Ovadia, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Rav Ovadia Yosef, was asked a question whether or not a person is allowed to recite Shema in front of a TV or a picture of an inappropriately dressed woman. You know, the halakha writes you cannot say Shema in front of an erva. There's a lot of things that classifies an erva. Uncovered hair, there's a nakedness of the body. Certain things have to be covered. So what happens if there's an image being portrayed from my television and I want to say Shema? Is that something I need to, it's not physical, but it's there on the screen. So he actually concludes that you can't define a picture or an image on a television as actual irva, but it's certainly prohibited to look and recite a blessing on the fact that it will provoke illicit thoughts. And he brings a proof to this idea based on a Gemara that says there was once a man who chose to become a Nazirite, which means he chose to go 30 days or a year without drinking wine and being, on a very, very high level of holiness. Why? Because he noticed his beautiful hair in the reflection in the water, and he was overcome with a false sense of pride. So because he saw that, a mere reflection, then certainly a picture or a screen is enough to make a lasting impression. And therefore, Rav Ovadia says you can't do it. So the question then becomes, what about our day-to-day activities? We are again in a society where this is all over the place. Walking in the street, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do if I see a lady that is not dressed properly, who is bearing a lot of skin, and purposely wants to flaunt her figure? And this again, the world we live in, this is very, very common. The truth is, we have to avoid the best that we can. If there's another way to walk, then you try to choose the other way to walk. If this is what you see in front of you, then you have to find a way not to be on that road or not to be on that sidewalk so that you're staring at this person. Rav Moshe Feinstein asked the question that if there's no other way to walk, then how can we be accountable for to see something inappropriate along the way? This would be a situation that's beyond the person's control. Sometimes this is the only way we can. This is our way to work. This is what I see. It shows up on my screen, or it shows up that I have no choice. And how can we label this person who has no other road to take to his destination? What should he do? So he writes that a person would be allowed to take, in this situation, he says a person would be allowed to take this road or this street or this sidewalk or whatever it is, and trust himself to avoid illicit thoughts. And he adds that to actually prohibit such a thing for a community is impossible because of the fact, remember Moshe Feinstein lived in New York. Again, it was many years ago, but New York was pretty bad, I'm sure, back then. He says the community can't handle that. We can't make a gzerah for everyone and just say, okay, what do you expect people to do? Just stay in the home? Maybe today we can work at home. I don't know. A lot of people do work at home. But generally, people got to go to work. They have to go to their shopping. They have to go to supermarkets. They have to go to shopping malls. And this is what they see. But he's only willing to be lenient with only when the person is certain that that he will not have inappropriate thoughts. If a person knows that he's going to have inappropriate thoughts, there's no leniency for him to go and walk this street knowing that he's going to start thinking of who knows what because he sees this lady half naked. So best to take an alternate route. But what if the alternate route is longer? Rabbi, if I want to take an alternate route, that means I got to go on the highway, I don't know, and the highway is going to take me another 30 minutes. And if I take this road, which is more filled with promiscuity, then it's going to take me half the time. Am I obligated to do so? So some say yes. Some say 100%. So what if it takes you 30 minutes? This is your neshama. And others say, no, it's okay. Again, it's part of life, and as long as you know that you're not going to think of I guess inappropriate thoughts, then it's okay. Question was asked of Moshe Feinstein about a crowded subway. People take subway to work. People take buses to work, and there's always scenarios where you might see inappropriately dressed women. You have a problem of physically touching women there. You're rubbing against women. So maybe a person should avoid taking the rush hour subway. Go either earlier or go afterwards. So he said, again, if there's no intention to derive any pleasure or show any affection to the woman that is next to you or that is dressed inappropriately, he said there's no prohibition to bump into her. There's no prohibition even to sit next to her because those are not your intentions. He said it might be even worse to sit next to your own wife when she's nidah, when she's menstruating, then when you're not allowed to touch her. That might be even worse than sitting next to a woman on the subway that you don't really care about. But again, he repeats in this responsa and he cautions that this is all based, assuming that this will not arouse him to have bad thoughts, and he has to be very, very, very careful of this. The Gemara actually says that if a person encounters a woman on the street, he cannot walk behind her. Should not walk behind her. We'll see is even stronger language we'll get to soon. But rather, he should run to get in front of her. And the reason is because if you walk behind the lady, it will cause you to look more at the lady. When you're in front of her, then you're not looking at the lady. When you're behind her, the Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin talks about Rav and Rav Yehuda were walking together when a woman walked in front of them. And Rav told Rav Yehuda, quickly, let's go in front of her so we avoid Gehinam. We don't want to go to hell, so let's just walk in front of her. Again, although there's a lot going on in the story, there's an issue with Yichud, being with a woman on the road, but some say this is one of the sources we see where a person cannot walk behind a woman. One of of course, the big questions that is often asked is swimming. Swimming. Now, obviously, the prohibition of gazing at women when they're wearing bathing suits or bikinis, the question that Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked is, what if a man has to go to the beach? What if a man has to go to the pool for therapeutic purposes, for his health? Doctor says you need the sun, you need the fresh air, you can't stay inside, and he's got a beach, and he says, is this a problem? Is this a problem knowing that there's going to be inappropriately dressed women over there? So Rav Moshe writes that again, in this situation would be allowed. Again, obviously best to be in a place where there's not that many women or not women dressed inappropriately. But if there's no alternative and he can withstand the temptation and he's not going to think about these or future thoughts, then the Gemara permits this man to take this road, assuming there's no temptation. But under any other circumstances, if you're just going to go to the beach and the pool just to look at the ladies, which a lot of people do. A lot of people do. That's why they go. I want to go and see. And then for sure it's not allowed. Rav Feinstein was asked another shayla. Can a lady go swimming at an all-women's pool, but you have a non-Jewish guy as a lifeguard? So now you have all ladies there, so they're comfortable. But can they be dressed in swimwear in I guess bathing suits and bikinis or whatever it is, if there's a non-Jewish lifeguard there. And he says there's two concerns. First, it would seem that one concern is, do women need to dress in a modest fashion, somewhat modest fashion, even when there's nobody looking? The fact that they're outside of their home, does that require women to now dress a little bit more modestly? But he doesn't feel that that's a problem. And he says because if this place is exclusive for women, then they can dress like, that's what it is. So they can dress in their bathing suit. Although there is a non-Jewish male present, it's still defined as a women's pool, and therefore it has a halacha as one's home, and therefore it is okay. But he does say 2 points on this. That it has to be a Gentile, meaning it cannot be a Jewish lifeguard. If it's a Jewish lifeguard, that changes everything. And the second concern that he says is that, are we worried that maybe the lifeguard might be enticed to do something with one of the ladies and start a relationship? The Gemara says if you have people around you that are known to be prutzim mean again promiscuous, then we have to be concerned. We have to be concerned that maybe this lifeguard might do something with the lady, whether it's a married lady, God forbid, or even a single girl. Do we have to be worried about that? And again, he says you don't have to be concerned. Rav Moshe Feinstein says you don't have to be concerned about that because this guy's license is on the line. He's a lifeguard. His job is to save, and he might lose his job if he was to ignore the responsibilities in order to engage in inappropriate behavior. Everything that we said till now, and halachically, it's important to make a distinction between gazing and looking. No one says you're not allowed to just look at a lady. Although yes, there are a lot of tzaddikim in the world that don't look at ladies whatsoever, and they'll keep their head down, and they really stay out of eyesight of many. But to look at a lady is mutar, and to even to see a part of the body of a woman that is normally covered. Okay, we're not talking about the genital areas, but okay. If a woman is dressed in shorts, which is normally covered, but if I just glance at it, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do a sin. Especially that I'm not focusing my attention on it, and that's not what I want to see more. So the issue is when I'm gazing, when I'm sitting on the lawn chair and I'm just watching girls pass by, and then I just start thinking, and then your mind starts wandering. That is the issue, So these are just some of the issues that, again, there's probably more to expand on, but I wanted to take the first part of the class to talk about the halachic issues and relating to the of Shemirat Enayim, the prohibition of viewing, thinking about inappropriate material. The temptations are there. Everywhere you look, you have the internet, you have the movies, you have not so much anymore newspapers and magazines, but you have billboards, and of course you have people on the street. So, you hope that inspires us to take greater care in observing this. So now let's just open it up a little bit and hopefully try to inspire ourselves to be a little bit more precautious. And again, I speak for men and women. Obviously, maybe you could direct this more towards the men, based on because some things women are exempt of, as we spoke about. But the eyes are very crucial to keep into control. There was a story that happened in Fez, Morocco, about 250 years ago. There was a hunter who would catch wild animals and sell them to the zoo, the zoo was owned by the king. And one day he caught a tiny lion cub, and he decided to keep for himself. And the cub grew larger and larger, and now was a full-grown lion. And the hunter tied it with a rope around its neck. And then he tied the other end of the rope to an iron gate that stood between his property and the street. And he felt confident that this was safe enough, that his pet was not going to cause any damage. There were two Jewish merchants who came to Fez, and they bought clothing at the market, and they realized that they were packing up the material, and they realized they needed a little bit more rope. But they already left the market. We have to go back to the market. We have to go back to the market. Come on, we have to go buy a whole bunch of rope in the market. We just need a little piece of rope. But yeah, we got to go. So they started walking back towards the market, and one of the Jewish guys says, stop the horses, gets out of the wagon, and he sees, look, there's some rope there tied to the gate. Didn't see the line, tied to the gate. I found what we need, let's go take it. You can't take it, chas v'shalom, it's geneva, you can't take it, it's not our rope, you're not allowed to steal it. He goes, even if you're right, even if it's geneva, it's a small avera, it's a small sin, how much do you think this rope costs? And, we need it for our parnasah. For parnasah, everyone says everything's allowed, right? We need it for our parnasah. So the guy says, I don't want anything to do with this, you go do what you want. So one of the merchants went, he started untying the rope, and he began pulling it, but the rope wasn't moving. It wasn't moving. And maybe it was under some stones, maybe it was caught on something. So he pulled harder, and then all of a sudden he comes face to face with the lion. But by then the rope was already untangled. It ran out of the yard and attacked the merchant. And the other merchant hears his friend screaming and shouting. But by the time he looked there, it was too late. The guy was dead. Gone. Died. At the funeral, there were 20 mourners. You have the wife of this merchant, his siblings, his children. They all sat Shiva. And the rabbi from Fez was sitting at the Shiva. He said, if there's one lesson to learn from this story, Leilu Nishmato, he thought that taking a rope was a small avera, was a small sin, nothing serious. But because of that small avera, we have 20 mourners. We have 20 people sitting Shiva over here. Every avera is severe. Every transgression is very, very profound. There's no such thing as a tiny avera. One example that people think is a small avera is their eyes. And they think it's a small sin because they didn't do any action. It's just, again, your eye just glancing. It's not something that is actual. But in actuality, it's very severe. The Rambam, like we said, says there are 5 sins that if a person commits, there's a very high chance they'll never be able to do full teshuvah. And one of them is someone who looks at arayot, someone who looks at women who are forbidden to him. He thinks he didn't do anything wrong. What's the problem? I looked at a woman. But he doesn't realize what's involved in this. Better to walk, says the Gemara in Mashiach Brachot, better to walk behind a lion than to walk behind a woman. We spoke about walking behind women and the Isur with that. But the Gemara actually takes it a step further. It's better to walk behind a lion and not a woman. Says the Vilna Gaon, when a person walks behind a lion, he's transgressing lo tirtzach. The averav, don't murder, because he puts his life at risk. But when he walks behind a woman, he's transgressing lo tinaf, which is do not commit adultery, the next of the 10 commandments, because it leads to sin. So what are the rabbis basically telling us? It's better to walk behind a lion than a woman. It must be that murder is a more minor transgression than adultery. That's what the rabbis are saying. But most people don't think it that way. Most people think that saving a life is the most important mitzvah of the Torah. But no, here the Chachamim, the Gemara is saying, no, adultery or being involved with a woman that doesn't belong to you is worse. And it's a small avera in his eyes. Chachamim tells us the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed because people didn't guard their eyes. And this is alluded to in the pasuk that we read every Tisha B'Av. Eni yordamayim. My eye drips water. So what does that mean? The Sefer Yetzirah explains that every limb that we have in our body is represented by another month. The two eyes correspond to the month of Tammuz and Av, which are the months that are associated with the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. The walls were breached on the 17th of Tammuz and destroyed on the 9th of Av, three weeks later. Eni, yordamayim. It's not a coincidence, it's the eyes. The Pasuk in Iyov writes, Berit keruta le'enai uma etbonen al betula. That Iyov couldn't understand why he was being punished. Because I had a brit keruta with my eyes. Iyov was the story of Iyov was that he was punished with horrible affliction and suffering throughout his life. It's really a story about emunah. But he didn't understand because he said, Brit keruta le'enai. I had a covenant with my eyes. Umayet bonen al betulah. How am I supposed to think of the betulah, the virgin? Mefarshim explain that I'm cautious. If I'm cautious with my eyes in the month of Tammuz and Av, which are those months, then when it comes to the month of betulah, that's Elul. Elul is the month of Virgo. Then I know I'm good. If I'm careful with my eyes during these 2 months, I'm not afraid when Elul comes around. Of course, Elul is a time where we are worried, because that's when we start our Selichot, because it's time for repentance. But if I know that I kept my eyes in check, as Eov says, I'm going to have favorable judgment on Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara Masechet Ta'anit says, Kala kol zman she'eneha yafot, a bride, as long as she has beautiful eyes, en kol gufa tzricha bedika. She doesn't have to be checked to ascertain her beauty. Her beautiful eyes, if she has beautiful eyes, she must be a beautiful woman. What does that mean? The Gemara wants to talk to us about beautiful women? That's not what the Gemara wants to tell us. It says the Kli Yakar that some women have, he asked a question, some women have beautiful eyes and they're not so beautiful. And some people are beautiful and they don't have the nicest eyes. So what exactly is going on over here? So he says, beautiful eyes refers to people who guard their eyes. And when you meet people who guard their eyes, don't worry about checking the rest of them. I can guarantee you that they're good people, that they're beautiful in and out, because they've checked their eyes. But eneha trutot kol gufa tzricha bdika. The Gemara says, but if her eyes are not beautiful, then she needs to be checked. Because if you don't check if you're not watching your eyes, if your eyes wander constantly, then likely you lack in Yirat Shamayim. It's likely that you lack in fear of Hashem. In one of the curses that we recite in Parashat Kitavot, Ve'ayita meshuga mimare enecha, you will become insane from what you will see. If you aren't cautious with your eyes, you will develop a ruach shtut, a form of insanity that will take over you, and that's going to bring you to perform much more averot. Because the Gemara says elsewhere that any time a person is sinned, it must be that he had a ruach shtut, a little sense of insanity within him, because otherwise a person wouldn't sin. But if you can't control your eyes, for sure that's going to happen. So that's what happens. We look at things, the more we see, the more we want. Ain ro'eh halev chomed. The heart desires. And that's why it says, Ve'lo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei nechem. But if that's the case, it should be the other way around. If first I see something, that's when my heart desires it, then maybe the pasuk should have wrote, don't follow your eyes and then your heart. But the pasuk puts heart first. Ve'lo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei nechem. Why that order? Should be the eyes first. Ve'lo taturu acharei nechem ve'acharei then acharei levavchem. So the Mefarshim explain, because sometimes the heart wants to go somewhere, but it can't find it. It desires to be someplace, but it requires the eyes to get you there. And therefore, don't let your heart cause you to sin with your eyes. Don't start with your heart to where you want to get to, because your eyes are going to take you there. Someone explained the following. People see what they want to see. Those who don't want to see forbidden things are not going to see forbidden things. And even if they do so, it doesn't affect them so much. So the order is correct. Guard your heart. Don't desire to see bad. And then automatically you're going to be able to guard your eyes. There was a time where the korbanot were brought in Mishkan Shiloh. This was the Mishkan when the Jews crossed over into Israel. And this was in the portion of Israel that belonged to Yosef HaTzadik. The Mishnah states it was one difference between Mishkan, this Mishkan, this tabernacle in Shiloh, and the Bet HaMikdash. That the light korbanot, the Kodashim Kalim, the Maaser Sheni, could be eaten solely within the walls of Jerusalem. However, in Mishkan Shiloh, you can eat these korbanot as long as you can see the Mishkan. Meaning, even if you were not within the walls of the Mishkan and you're outside, you could see the Mishkan, I can eat my korban. What's the difference? Why is it that when I have a Bet HaMikdash, I need to be inside the walls of Jerusalem? Okay? and by the Mishkan as long as I can see it. So Gemara says the reason is because it said about Yosef HaTzadik, Ale Ayin, that Yosef was a person who overpowered his eye. That was the blessing that he got from Yaakov. And of course, it had to do with his overcoming the sin of the wife of Potiphar. And therefore, because Yosef, the eye that didn't want to derive pleasure from that sin, will merit that people can partake and benefit as far as the eye can see. Mishkan Shiloh, which is in the section of Yosef, when a person guards his eyes, he removes all the barriers. Nothing is stopping him in his connection to Hashem. And Hashem wants to bestow bounty on us, but we are putting up barriers and obstacles because of what we allow ourselves to see. The Gemara says that 99% of the people die from Ayin Hara. That's why most people die from Ayin Hara. And only 1% die from natural death. And the Bet Yisrael of Gur says, you know what this means? This means that everybody suffers from a bad eye. What does it mean, suffers from a bad eye? You're not cautious with their eyes. And that's the root of all problems. And the tzaddikim would go to great lengths to protect themselves. So rabbis, again, like we said, some keep their head down, some don't go into the major cities. Some they consider any public space like dirty. I can't go there. They will do whatever it takes. There's a story brought down in the Gemara. Rav Yosef and Rav Sheshat, they were the students of Rav, and when their rabbi Rav passed away, they took upon themselves the ways of their teacher, and they were not going to look beyond their 4 amot, their 2 by 2 meter area around them. Why? Because this is what the rabbi did, and we saw how holy he was. They realized that they couldn't do it. They couldn't reach the level of the rabbi. They couldn't be so cautious. So they preferred to be blind than to see forbidden things. So some Rishonim write that they prayed to be blind in order not to see what was around them. And that's what happened to them. And indeed, David HaMelech talks about this. This was also David HaMelech's prayer in Tehillim. He writes, Ha'aver einai mereot shav. Remove my eyes from seeing falsehood. I'd rather be blind than seeing things that I shouldn't be seeing. The Gemara Masechet Ta'anit talks about how the 15th of Av is the happiest day on the calendar. That and Yom Kippur. Because the girls would come out to the vineyard and dance. And they would find a chatan. That's where they would find a groom. But the lashon that they use when they call out to the boys is they say, Bahur, sana enecha. Raise your eyes and choose me. Look at the good qualities that I have. And a lot of the Mefarshim explain they had to tell the boys, Sana enecha. Raise your eyes, because their eyes were down. The whole episode seems a little bit strange. The fact that there's girls dancing around, but they had to meet, so this is where they found their shidduch. But the boys didn't go over there with the, wow, look at all these pretty girls. Their eyes were down. And it was the girl saying, look at me. They're all dressed the same. Gemara talks about, Mishnah talks about, they're all dressed the same, so that, not one person was wearing Gucci and Versace and the other one was wearing less. Right? They're all dressed the same. But that's what it was. That's what it was. It's not a coincidence that the verb for seeing, ro'eh, is the same as fearing, yir'ah. Like we said, there's a strong correlation. When a person does not have, when a person lacks the ability to control his eyes, he lacks in Yirat Hashem, he lacks in fearing God. The Midrash writes that Rabbi Shimon ben Halafta attended a Brit Milah, and when he came outside, he saw the Malach HaMavet smiling. And he asked him, why are you so happy? So he says, I heard the father of the boy say that the leftovers of the Brit Milah are going to be for the boy's wedding. He goes, but he doesn't know that this boy is going to die in 30 days. So Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta asked him, how does he know that? So Malach HaMavet says, we have a book that says when everybody's going to die. So Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta says, when am I going to die? You have a book? When am I going to die? So Malach HaMavet said The fate of people like you, we don't know. Why? Because it says, Yirat Hashem tosif yamim. Fear of Hashem adds days. So what does that show you? That guarding your eyes, if it has direct correlation to Yirat Hashem, overcoming your Yetzer Hara even once can grant you life. It can mamash grant you life. And that's what it is. Your eyes is just one part of the body, but it's so integral. Like I said, you could look in your eyes and see right through your neshama. But if I go up to an animal in the time of a Bet HaMikdash and I say, I want that leg to be a part of a korban, that leg, that right foreleg of the cow to be part of a korban, there's no such thing. The whole animal becomes a part of the korban. The moment I designate the foreleg or the jaw or the tail, the whole animal becomes part of the korban. Because the kedusha spreads from one limb to the whole body. The same thing is when you sanctify one limb of the body. When a person is careful with what he sees, the purity will spread through his entire essence. And it'll purify and sanctify his entire being. I want to end with a very, very powerful idea by the Tosha Rebbe. I saw it this past Friday night when my mind was already preparing for this shi'ur. So it's important to note, Kabbalistically, that actually our dear colleague, Efi Pavanov, just gave a shi'ur on this 2 weeks ago. I recommend everyone listening to it. He talked about the Kabbalistic history of the world. And it was a great class. And he said that the 6,000 years that are in this world correspond to the lower 6 sfirot, the lower 6, divine characteristics or qualities of Hashem that he brings down into this world. And he went to prove it, how each one worked. Nevertheless, to make a long story short, the 6th sfira, which is the 6th millennium that we are in now, is the midah, the sfira of Yesod. Yesod is the foundation. And if you actually look at a chart of all the sfirot, you will see that Yesod is the reproductive part of the body. That's where it is. That's where Yesod is. That's why the foundation, what's able to produce. And of course, Yesod is Yosef HaTzadik, who struggled with this. Very, 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 that was his test in the story of the wife of Potiphar. And that's why the Pasuk says, Tzadik Yesod Olam. The Tzadik is the foundation of the world. And Yosef is called, of all the people, called Yosef HaTzadik. Because he was able to conquer that. He was able to conquer that inclination. So he explains in his lecture, and I've heard this many times with the great Rav Moshe Weinberger in New York, who has 200 episodes on this. He has a whole 200 classes. It's called the Chabur of Yosef HaTzadik. All he talks about is this, on how today's challenge is the challenge of Yesod and our ability to control the temptations, the sexual temptations that we have, the thoughts, the eyes, everything today. And that's why we are faced with so much more than ever before. Everything you see, never was it like this as what it is now. But look what the Tosha Rebbe says on Parashat Vayeshev. The pasuk says, "Ele toledot Yaakov Yosef." These are the offsprings of Yaakov, Yosef. Well, it wasn't just Yosef. He had other children. Why are you saying that only Yosef is the offspring? So he says that the Ikar Avodah of a Yaakov, of a Yisrael, the main job of every Jew in this world is Yosef, is to behave and conduct himself with Kedusha, with holiness, just like Yosef. The Midat of Yesod HaTzadik. That is the essence of what a Jew is. When he controls his brit, when he's able to watch himself and watch what he sees and not have illicit thoughts, And through that, you were able to be mitkadesh ta yesod. The mitkadesh is part of God. And if a person is, God forbid, because he says that's the shorish, that's the yesod, that's the foundation. Everything is built above it. The only thing below that is malchut. Malchut is the lowest of the sfirot, and of course that's reserved for David HaMelech and Mashiach, all other time. But if a person is not shomer, is not careful, does not guard himself, chas v'shalom, then you lose your koach emunah. You lose any connection you have to Hashem. You fall into the trap of the sitra achra, which is the evil inclination, the negative forces that come to get you to sin. And you find yourself in this world swimming in filth and geinam, and you have no purpose. And he says, if you pay attention to the whole story of Yosef and the brothers, look at the damage that was caused because they were pogem Yosef, because the brothers injured, they flawed Yosef for what they did. Now, on a very literal level, we know the story. They threw him into a pit, he got sold, okay, done. But he's using it metaphorically. When you cause damage to Yosef, to yourself, this concept of watching your eyes and holding back temptations, when you're not careful with that, you are setting yourself up for destruction. Because these brothers had to go with their families down to Egypt for 210 years in slavery, where Mitzrayim, Egypt, was called Ervat Ha'aretz. It was the worst, the most immoral place in world history. Was that Egypt at that time before the Exodus? The worst of the worst. It was a tit for tat, midah keneged midah punishment because of what they did to Yosef. And then, of course, later on, it was not over when hundreds of years later came the 10 martyrs, the 10 rabbis who had to be killed as a result of it. Why? Because they were pogem yesod. So ele toldot Yaakov. You want to know what your tolada is. You want to know what you need to produce in this world. What a Yaakov, what a Yisrael has to do. Yosef. This is our mission now. This is our challenge, our day-to-day challenge for every single person, religious, non-religious, balabait, rabbi, tamid chacham. It makes no difference. You cannot, if you live in North America, if you're not hiding in a cave, then you will come across these things. It's impossible not to. So the question is, am I just gonna do my best to ignore and not see the things and not be drawn into it? Or am I gonna sit there and I'm gonna gaze? Because if you start gazing and you start thinking, you will come to act on it. And if you act, God forbid, it's destruction. It's destruction. When a person is shomer himself, when he guards himself from this as much as he can, even though there are times that he will come across things by accident, no one is perfect. You will see things that, okay, this lady walked in front of me in the mall, she's not wearing any clothes. Or I'm at the beach and I see something, but my intent is to swim. I want to relax. I want to go to the beach and I just want to enjoy the ocean, the sounds of the ocean. That's why I'm there for. I need there's a salt water, whatever it is. It's relaxing. That's why I'm there. Chazak, you're allowed. Enjoy. But if your purpose is to go there for others, then it's a problem. But if you guard your eyes and only once in a while something happens, it's not your fault. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'mechaper on those. And God will forgive you. He'll atone your sins, no problem. And that's how we're bezochet to olam haba. But it's knowing that that's our key, knowing that that's our focus. That is our main goal in this world. This is what we have to do. There's so much to talk about Shemirat Enayim. And I combined the two classes to have both men and women over here as well. And I'm choosing not to discuss, maybe another time we can talk about watching our eyes, our jealous eye, which is another facet about the eye. When I'm looking at things, maybe this could be more pertaining to women than men, maybe, right? When you see something that someone else has, and that's more like ayin hara, that we also have to guard our eyes. Because guarding our eyes is not just for inappropriate material. and sexual exploiting images, but also have to watch my eyes and so my eyes are not a jealous eye, so that I don't want to desire everything what my friend has or what she has or what he has. But again, maybe that's for another time. Right now, we have a lot of work to do. This is our avodah. This is the millennium before the Mashiach. This is it. It's the last one, and it's right at the end. It's right at the end. So it's a lot of work. The Yetzer Hara is stronger than ever. It's going to come up with, before you know it, you're going to have AI things flowing all over. They already have these goggles that I don't even want to know what you can do. You don't even have to probably even talk. You probably just think about it. Soon you're just going to think about it, the image will show up in front of you. It's coming. It's only a matter of time. But that's the time before Mashiach. The time before Mashiach in the millennium of Yosef HaTzadik. The millennium of Yesod. Hashem should give us the koach. He should give us the strength to overcome these desires and understand how special, how truly powerful our eyes are. Eni or damayim. We protect the eyes. We'll be zocheh to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. B'minabi amenu amen. Can you have a wonderful night.